unfortunately, we are learning this, and it's painful. But hey, think about when you were a teenager. That's a painful period in your life, and yet that's the period you probably grow the most. So yeah, all this is painful, but we're growing, and we're knowing more and more. And I think this is why now we're seeing as I said earlier about a referendum against the New World Order, we're seeing this happening. Brexit, that was a revolt against the New World Order. This latest, if you want to call it election we had, that's a referendum against the New World Order. That's right. And I think this shows us a way for the future. We don't have to get out in the streets, burn something down. I never quite understood that either. You know, somebody is oppressing me, so I'm going to burn down my grocery store. I don't get it. But anyway, this shows us we don't have to have the violent revolution that Kennedy forewarned us about, as cited by John prior to me about, you know, you're going to make revolution inevitable. Well, I think what we see is we're having a relatively violent-less revolution as more and more people wake up. And it's not due to any of our establishments like the media or our politics. It's all happening because of the internet, okay? Now, let me give you a little caution about the internet. The upside of the internet is that anybody and everybody has access to the internet. The downside is that anybody and everybody has access to the internet, okay? So you got to go to the internet with a little bit of discernment. Read my book. No, but read other books. Read, study, look at alternative sites, okay? Because you cannot go to one place and get it all wrapped up. That's what a lot of you, and certainly most of the public, that's what they really want. That's what they want when they turn on their TV. They don't want to really hear all about all of so-and-so shooting here and a car wreck over there. And they simply want to know what's going on, and more importantly, what does it mean to me? All right? And that's what they're not getting, really. They're just getting an earful of yada, 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 and then they go away thinking, gee, what does all that mean? They don't know. So don't expect any one person, me or anyone else, to be able to give you, you know, 25 words or less is what's going on. That's pretty funny too. I can't tell you how many times I've been asked, well, hey, Kennedy assassination, you know, 25 words or less, what happened there? Yeah, you guys get it, right? You can't just say it, can you? Although I did work it down to 25 words or less. I said, okay, here's what happened. John F. Kennedy was shaking up the status quo, and the status quo struck back. But of course, you tell somebody that, they go, how do you know that? How can you prove that? You know, blah, blah, blah. And unfortunately, the only way that you can really bring them up to speed is to start going through all of the little details, okay? The mayor of Dallas, his brother was General Charles Carroll, who got fired by Kennedy, and he was liaison with the CIA, and he was behind the Bay of Pigs, little details like that. Or you know, you've got the blind man, Ed Hoffman, you know, who saw the guy fire from behind the fence and toss it to a compass. And what'd I say? Oh, no, excuse me. I'm sorry, Ed. No, he was deaf, that's right, from childhood, by the way. Really great guy. And I'll never forget the morning that I met him and his daughter, I guess, that acted as an interpreter, and some other people, and we went up on the knoll, and we walked the whole thing with him explaining everything, you know. And I think I only made one mistake in translating and giving his account, and that was he was talking and describing about the man he saw behind the fence that first ran with the gun. And I said, did he have a suit on? And I thought he said yes, but later they said, well, what he meant was he had a nice coat, or it was the other way around. So anyway, just a small detail. But yeah, so Hoffman and other people like this, It's all there on the record. All you have to do is really study it. And so today, when people say, will we ever know the truth? What I really want to do is grab them by the shirt and say, look, if you read, you know the truth, you know, because it's all out there. You all have access. When I got into this, again, actually when it happened, and I got into it because that very weekend, as I'm watching TV and I'm hearing all of these people describe the shots, it's always a bang, pause, bang, bang. Well, and then later that afternoon, they said, we got Oswald, we got this Mannlicher Carcano bolt-action rifle. I'm going, wait a minute. Because even at that time, I was in my 20s, and I've been hunting. I had bolt-action rifles, and better ones than he had. I had German Mausers. And I said, you can't get a bang-bang with a bolt-action rifle, because you have to cock the bolt, eject the empty shell, and ram in the next one, pull the handle down, you know, regain. And here's the key thing. Because actually I have a 6.5 Mannlicher Carcano that we used in a documentary one time, and the gunsmith who had taken it and put a guitar strap on it, just like Oswald had, put a 12-point scope on it. I said, what are you going to do? And when we were finished with the production, I said, what are you going to do with that rifle? He said, I don't know. I said, well, can I buy it? And he said, yeah, probably. I said, what do you want for it? He said, $100. And I went, okay. You know, and this wasn't that far back. And $100 for a rifle, that should tell you what kind of piece of crap it actually was. You know, in fact, I've had it now for maybe almost 20 years, and I've never fired it because I don't want to. All right, because the bolt's loose, you know. And I'm afraid it's going to blow up on me or something. There's a reason why the Italians during the war nicknamed it the humanitarian weapon, because you couldn't kill anybody with it. So right then I thought, wait a minute, you can't get a bang bang. But I didn't have anything to put in its place. I guess my epiphany came in the fall of 1972 when Eugene McCord, one of the Watergate burglars, finally fessed up to the judge. He says, okay, actually we're working for the Committee to Re-elect the President, appropriately acronymed as CREEP. And of course the President was that other creep, Richard Nixon. Well, at that point, you know, it kind of came together for me, and I suddenly realized that the President of the United States could, did, and would lie to us. Okay, and so that's my epiphany. Of course, that was 72. I think it took a lot of others a little longer to reach that epiphany, but, and then see, that was 72, so 3 years later, I was asked to teach a course on the Kennedy assassination at the University of Texas at Arlington. And I thought, well, that'd be a good idea. Russell, weren't you in those classes? Yeah. And so I did that for 30 years until I retired in 2007. I figured, well, after 30 years, if they hadn't got it, they're not going to have it now, you know. So, but the key thing is that back then in 1975, number one, I actually published an article on the front page of the Star-Telegram that said if the new talked about committee to investigate Kennedy does their job, they will find there was a coup d'etat in the United States in 1963. So, needless to say, I was the outcast. Everybody thought I was the nut. How can you say something like that? And now, I think most people pretty much agree to all that. They don't know who, they don't know exactly how, they don't know exactly how they made it work, but they do know that it was not just a lone Oswald, and that's why I really honor you folks for coming out and standing by Oswald. I don't know what kind of time I have left, but I'm ready to answer any questions you might have. Answers are free. Truthful answers are $5.
You got 15 minutes.
Okay, great, thank you. And oh yeah, and if you want me to tell you something you've never heard before, that's $1,500. No, all right. Do we have any questions? That's really burning on you. Go ahead.
Not really a question, but just to point out that Oswald did have a Mauser for only 24 hours.
Yeah, right. That's true. He did have a Mauser until it somehow metamorphosed into a Yeah, it was. Just like, I'm trying to think of the AK-47, you know, was just a knockoff of the Germans. Their, what do they call it, the MP-42 or something that point anyway.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want a question for Jim Martis, please come up to the microphone so everybody can hear the question, okay?
There we go.
Mr. Marsh, it's an honor, first of all, thank you.
Thank you.
I read Crossfire so much, it's at home held together by tape and spit, so I gotta get another copy. And Ruled by Secrecy is the first book I give to people whenever they ask me what's going on, because it's the primer, it's got what you need to start.
Thank you for mentioning that, and I want to tell you, I'm really kind of chagrined because we took off with this pile of books and somehow ran off without any rule by secrecies. But I want to tell you guys, if you hadn't read my book, Rule by Secrecy, you really need to, because it will give you the guide path for all of what's happened through history.
And I just wanted to ask you, for the people that say, well, it's not, you know, let's say, oh, it's the mob, or it's just Lyndon Johnson.
Right.
You actually went to the pains to actually go back, and it was the first time, to me, you broke the story. It was the first time I had ever read it, back to when we were attacked at Pearl Harbor, and Churchill calls Roosevelt and says, hey, it's another Port Arthur. And in your book, you know, instead of saying, oh my God, we've got to do something, Roosevelt's response is, well, that should make our friends happy. So I think you would say that this kind of conspiratorial, these higher powers than any one person have been going on for decades, but I wanted you to speak to it, and thank you again.
Thank you. And yes, absolutely. We now know beyond any question Pearl Harbor was known. We knew it was going to be attacked, and I mean, not everybody, but